Hey everyone, and welcome to Already Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Star Trek The Next Generation Season 3, Episode 16. It's called The Offspring. So, full spoilers for the episode, as always. This is an episode where Data invents a child, as it were.
Invents is maybe not quite the right word. Engineers.
Child's actually. There's a whole arc in this episode where Picard won't call it a child at first, but then by the end he does call it a child because he kind of understands it to Data as a child, and that it's taken from Data's own coding, Data's own systems, and because he couldn't have done it from scratch because he doesn't know how to make it, because only one person's ever made Data, right? And no one else can do it. But Data was able to sort of duplicate some of him and build a new android around it. And this became his child, who is called Lal. When we actually get to meet the who eventually is a woman, but it starts off genderless, and he lets Lal choose.
And speciesless too.
Species, yeah, because she has the option of Klingon or Andorian or whatever. She has a whole choice. She's basically at the start of an RPG in a video game. You know, she gets to pick her race,
those choices
gender.
where Data's like, so these are the four that we've got to narrow down to, and it cycles through them. I'm like, yeah, this is totally character selection.
Yeah, but before that was a normal thing. This is the weird thing, is that this reminds us of the start of a video game, but in 1989 or whatever, I mean, video games existed, but the type of RPGs we're thinking of weren't around yet.
Oh no, not until, I don't know, nearly a decade later.
Yeah, so that is the gist of the episode, and we'll get into it. What did you make of The Offspring?
I thought it was actually quite good. I thought it was solid for Data. I thought it was really good for Picard. Some awkward moments here or there that were just not landing quite as well as they should have done. But overall, the beats were really solid.
I started off thinking this was a not bad episode. I thought the acting from the actress who played Lal was occasionally a little bit over the top, I guess.
It felt over the top and stiff at the same time, but in a way that kind of works.
Obviously, yeah, she's meant to be kind of weird because she's like a new version of Data, so she's doing all the non-human kind of esque little quirks and things, but and some of it did come off as quite funny. In fact, there's actually two different moments in this episode that I have seen the gifs of. One's a Picard sort of double facepalm moment, which is kind of common because you get Picard facepalming all the time. The one that I'd also seen, there's a moment in this where they try to teach her to like catch a ball, and the ball goes past her, and then like 5 seconds later she puts her hand up for it. And Data just kind of smirks, like, I've seen that gif before. As soon as it happened, oh, I've seen this. I've seen that little moment on its own. So no, I thought the episode was fine, not great, but fine. And then the last like 10 minutes, Picard starts making speeches, and it kind of elevated from like a good episode to a great episode. To the point where Picard's speech was so goddamn good that in like one moment I kind of went, you know what, I'm starting to be on Team Picard over Kirk here. And Kirk was great fun, and I love being around Kirk. Kirk was, he was a great main character for that show and those movies, and it was very entertaining. But there's the speech he gives here, as my cat's starting around in the background.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it was really distracting me as well. They were having a bit of a fight in the back.
The fight is about, it's just the noise when they start actually chasing, and that's quite loud in my. Well, it's not even so much that's
for me. I'm looking at you, and I can just see them, like, just next to your head, just, like, attacking each other from behind the curtains, and it's very distracting.
Yeah, it's not so much that it's loud, it's that I can feel the vibrations of the floor when they're darting about, so it feels loud.
Yeah.
But it's not actually sound, per se, it's more of a bass thing. But anyway, but he starts making these big speeches at the end, to the point where I was almost getting teary-eyed at one point, because Picard was, like, sticking up for Data to such an extent, and because there was a point before he really made his big speech where I was like, okay, this is kind of a sequel to Measure of a Man. It's not the exact same thing, but it's kind of a follow-up in the sense that it's more about Data's rights and in turn Lal's rights to what she gets to do. And Picard even references it at one point. He says, I helped define, what Data's rights are. I helped define that. And I thought, okay, this is a decent follow-up to that episode, but not as good. And I still don't think it's as good. I think Measure of a Man still stands out as being,
that's better.
But by the time Picard's done making his speeches at the end, I was like, you know what? It got a lot closer than I thought it was going to.
I can see that. And let's be honest, these speeches from Picard, they're probably the high point of the show whenever they happen. And basically, this is why you've got Patrick Stewart, right?
do you know, I was talking to Tara about the episode, and she said something that kind of stuck with me, is that Picard is basically Superman. And that he's very different characteristically in that he's a grumpy old man who hates kids and all these other things. But when he starts making these speeches and the way he sticks up for people, and the way he he's adamant that he will stick to his morals and the ideals of the Federation, the ideals that he has devoted his life to. It does start feeling kind of like Superman, of like, no matter what, in the face of adversity, like standing up and saying, no, I'm not backing down. This is simply what I believe is right, and I'm going to stick up for it no matter what.
I can see that. And just, looking back beyond just this episode with that in mind, that worked in, I think it was the last episode with Riker.
Mm-hmm.
The way he was willing to go through the extradition if they could present, evidence that seemed fair. And that's a pretty Superman thing to do. He'll play by the rules of wherever he is until it's like, well, no, hang on, you're being unreasonable.
I think it's fair to say he's the Superman. I mean, admittedly, we've only seen 2 so far, but he's the Superman of the Star Trek captains in the way he handles himself. Whereas, I don't know what DC character I'm comparing Kirk to. He's more of a Hal Jordan. I'd have said Hal Jordan, but I can kind of see it.
I could see both, honestly.
Yeah. I could.
I think he's less clearly defined, which is why you're going, Hal. I'm going, yeah, sure, I can see that, and I could make an argument for Aquaman at the same time.
Hotshot pilot, bit of a ladies' man. Like, you've got those qualities.
Yeah.
Got those qualities. Anyway, so we get like another actor playing the child, as it were, at the start. One thing I noticed in this episode is that the camera, like, they really like doing a lot of walking talks this episode. I was really feeling the walking and talking throughout the hallways in one continuous shot, and I was wondering if they got some new equipment like for this episode, and they were really like itching to use it, so they were overdoing it a little bit.
It happens.
It's very possible.
I don't blame them. Everyone in every industry wants to play with the new toys.
Because it was at the start of the episode when Wesley's with Troy and I think Geordi, and they're walking through the hallway because Data said, "Come and see this thing I've been doing," and of course we end up with this sort of very weird looking version of Lal before she ultimately picks her gender and appearance and whatnot, and that's kind of a thing Data wants Lal to pick what she is.
It's very, very forward thinking.
Yeah. And Picard is like kind of livid that Data did this without telling anyone, that it's so secretive. And Data's like, because he does understand why Picard feels that this should have been something that was discussed, that he's making a new life form, that he is creating a new version of AI or an extension of his own AI. This is a big deal. But Data's response is like, well, I've observed the ship and no one else consults you about the, creating your life.
Procreation, I believe, was the word.
Procreation was the word, you're right, yeah. No one else talks about procreation with you. And Picard just sort of has this, like, he's got a damn point, and I don't want to admit it.
He kind of doubles down, doesn't he? Because he's like, well, whatever, you still should have consulted me.
Yeah. But because Picard is right, this is different to just humans having kids. There is a difference.
But Data is also right that, I mean, it's not up to Picard.
Yeah, he's followed the rules as far as he can tell, but it's new ground is kind of the point. Is all of this is new ground, and this is why this admiral is very interested and sort of wants to take Lal away from the Enterprise and have her in a more scientific research sort of condition, have her be monitored by a bunch of people in the Federation, all these scientists, and sort of document everything and blah 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 blah, and which ultimately becomes the core debate of the episode is. Does Data have a right to keep her around as a parent? This is his child. Do they treat it as such? And that ultimately builds up to my favourite line of the episode, is where Picard, in the middle of his speech, says, ultimately you're trying to order an officer to give up their child. Well, not while I'm their captain. Which is kind of the defining, that's the beat. That's the moment that makes the whole episode, is him saying that.
There's a lot of great moments like that, though. I think one of them, for me, was when Data asked Picard, is the Admiral a parent? And Picard's like, yeah, I think so. And he's like, why? And he goes, well, I assume when he had his first child, he didn't have the experience required to be a parent either. And it's just, like these almost barbs, the way they're kind of delivered, with like, yeah, you should think about that.
But coming from Data, they're not like...
No, they're not. That's what I mean. The line in any other character would feel like that, but from Data, they just like this logical thing that that just is. Of course, this makes sense.
Yeah, it's just a straight up fact. Basically, is what he's pointing out.
Yeah.
So yeah, that stuff is really good. Ultimately, like we see like a montage of Lal like learning things, which is where the ball thing happens, and we find that she's struggling to fit in with the kids because there's a great point where Wesley even has a good bit of advice for him. He's like, hey, she should go to school and be with kids her own age, and Data's like, she's 2 weeks old. Well, closer to her own age then, technically, Yeah. She is different because she's obviously much more advanced than what a 2-week-old baby would be because she's got all this knowledge.
Trying to find the right level of class for her, so they put her in. They're like, oh well, she's got a lot of knowledge, so we'll put her in with the older kids. But it was too subtle, she didn't have the nuance with that. So they thought, all right, the younger kids then, and kind of work her way up. But she kind of terrified them because it's this weird android that doesn't understand anything, and they're kids, and kids are terrible.
Yeah, and it's social skills, which is part of what she needs to learn. That's why it's not just about the information and the knowledge per se, but you have all this stuff, and she's doing kind of well. Various characters meet her. It does lead to a big comedy spot. Because obviously there's no Riker for a lot of this episode, and there's a reason for that. This is actually Frakes' directorial debut of this episode.
Was it?
Yeah,
I didn't catch it.
I noticed that he was the director. I didn't necessarily know it was the first. I actually found that out afterwards, but this was his first time directing. So they kind of like let Riker be absent for a lot of the episode, but he has like one joke scene, and then he's kind of there just around at the end. But
it's pretty funny, that scene, to be fair.
Honestly, the second they pointed out that he just got back, like his shuttle just got back, I went, oh, they're going to do something funny with Riker because he doesn't know about Lal.
Yeah.
And it's right where Lal in the middle of the episode has been introduced again, and she's even taken a job in 10 Forward, just serving drinks and kind of not doing really well at it, but
being a bartender to learn the social skills of listening to people.
Yeah, that's basically the gist of it. And Guyanen's been very understanding and knows what she's going through and is helping her. But she sees like a couple like flirting with each other and holding hands, and Guyanen has to explain touching and then the kissing because she yells out, "Oh, he's biting that woman," which was a funny line, honestly. It's the same earlier on. There's a scene that ends where Data like gives her some flowers for the first time, and she smells the flowers, and she yells out something. I wish more father or something like that. She'll yell things occasionally.
Yeah,
but
that had a funny line after that, where she's like, "Why are they doing that?" And Guyanen's like, "Well, I think you'll have to ask Data about that when you're ready."
That was not the line. It's because they leave, and she says, "Why are they leaving?"
Oh, okay.
And she says, "Oh, you'll have to ask your father about that because they're clearly a way to have sex."
Yes,
that is clearly the implication. But Riker walks in just after this, so it's just after this little lesson of trying to teach her what kissing is and all these things. And Riker comes up, and he, in very suave, Riker's like, "Oh, I haven't seen you around here," just being Riker. And Lal, having the super strength of an android, just picks him up off of his feet and kisses him. And Riker's just very confused. And just at this moment, Data comes in and says, "Oh, Commander Riker, what are your intentions with my daughter?"
And Riker's just like, "Your daughter? Good to know. Right, I'm off."
I'm just going to leave, yeah. Riker's just so confused. He's confused on multiple levels. He's just been manhandled and then finds out that this is his friend and colleague's daughter. And, I mean, even forget the fact that he's an android. Just, there's too much going on here. I'm just going to leave. I'm just going to run to the end of the ship and find out what's been going on.
It's a good plan.
Really dark stuff. But obviously the Admiral shows up, demands to meet her, demands to know what's going on. He wants to assess because Picard's already said, "No, we're not letting you take Lal just like that. Like under no circumstances, this is the best place for her to learn from Data, who's the only one who's had the experience of being an android in the fleet and being around all these different people. I mean, who else can teach her how to fit in her unique condition but Data?" And he keeps trying to argue, and we get this big speech. The big speech has come when he meets Lal, and then he's sitting with Data and Picard, and the Admiral keeps trying to argue why she has to go to this research center, why she can't stay here, so on and so on. And Picard makes these big speeches, which are wonderful, and because there's a great moment of acting from Stewart where he kind of accidentally calls her a child for the first time, and then notices he's done it, and then sort of smirks a little bit and goes, "Yes, child."
Down on it.
Yeah, and he's like, "No, she is a child. Like, there's nothing else to call her this."
There's a lot of really great moments like that. I think it was one of the earlier meeting scenes between the three of them. And the Admiral says to Data, it's like, look, it'd be much easier for her if you just agree to volunteer to let us take her, and she won't feel like she has this obligation to stay with you anymore then. And he's like, you're asking me to volunteer to give up my child? Not a chance.
Yeah. And then likewise, eventually Picard, when she's sitting there with them, says, actually, no one's asked Lal what she wants. What would you like to do? It's like, I would wish to remain here in the Enterprise. And she even points out that, maybe there'd be valuable learning experiences away from the Enterprise, but surely I should learn everything from the Enterprise that I can first, because she's only been here, a couple week,
2
turned
weeks,
on
I
at
think
most.
it was, yeah.
So, of course, she has tons to learn here still from everyone on the ship. And it's something that's a bit more closed off and nurtured. And, I mean, the Admiral has a fair point. There's only 2 of these androids now that exist between Data and Lal, and if the Enterprise, which gets into fights on a regular occasion, if they both die, that's them both lost, if the ship goes down. So surely it'd be safer to have them separate. But that's true for, any family, really.
Yeah, and this feels like such a stretched argument to me, in the sense that before Lal, they was the only one in existence. You're happy having him on the Enterprise.
This is the thing. He acknowledges multiple times with Picard about Data's rights, about his rights as an android, that he has a life form but sentient and live. And I was really glad later on, because I kept feeling like, okay, he's acknowledging that he's supposed to recognize Data as a life form with free will, but he just keeps thinking of reasons for that free will to go away in the case of Lal, because he wants to use Lal for experiments and whatever. And I was really glad that towards the end of the episode, Picard outright calls him out on it and says, no, you acknowledge his sentience or her sentience and free will, but you disregard it completely, immediately. You don't actually talk about it as if you actually are taking it into account in any of your decisions or any of your arguments. He outright calls him out on it, and I was really sort of glad to hear that. If it felt like, and I think one of the things that I would really also compliment this episode for, and it's something that a couple of episodes have had, but I felt it in this one, and even before it got great towards the end, I felt it, was that it felt like a unique episode in that right from the get-go, it felt really focused, laser-focused, and it had its own tone that felt different from most just sort of typical episodes. And it's something that Q Who had in a very different way, but where it felt like it had its own unique feeling right from the first minute. And I felt that here, and I wonder if that's another sign of the quality ramping up here in Season 3, where we're getting more, even the episodes that aren't the outright, knockouts, are still having these unique feelings where, no, they feel really focused, they're out there, they're here to do what whatever their attention is supposed to be spent on, and it never feels like it's just another typical episode with the same tone as every other episode.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. That it definitely feels different from the start. It's hard to place your finger on that tone immediately, I would say, but it doesn't feel like just a standard opening of an episode.
No,
so a bit more mystique to it, maybe.
A bit more mystique, a bit more heart, and I think maybe it's just the simple idea of getting away from the template. And I happen to know that because Star Trek Next Generation was a kind of a unique show in that it accepted spec scripts, and this was a spec script. I found this out after as well. Where the writer was someone who was doing other jobs but wrote, sent in some scripts, and this one he got a call back and he actually became a staff writer afterwards. And I actually found out through this that Roald D. Moore, who went on to do Battlestar Galactica and stuff, also got his start in the show with a spec script. I don't know what episode it was, but he's already a staff writer at this point. He was already like a regular writer in Season 3. But that's how he ended up getting the job as well, as he was a spec script submission that stayed on. So I think that's really interesting. And
it is interesting. So I was going to say this, the script feels like someone who cares. So I assume being a spec script, this was someone who'd seen the first 2 seasons and liked it, and that's why they put the effort in, I guess.
It's almost like, okay, you had some core good writers to run the show, right? Or maybe like they came on, but it's almost like a really fun way of padding out the writing staff with people who are really talented but also super fans. Like, obviously, because I think, because when I was reading about this, apparently like they had people whose jobs it was to read these spec scripts that were sent in, and there was like maybe like 10 a day getting read. So there was a lot getting sent in that obviously never went anywhere.
Understandably.
Naturally.
Yeah.
But like finding those people with talent who cared about the story, it's almost like having those unique voices who really are passionate about the actual core concept and characters led to better episodes more consistently.
Yeah, it might well be. And I think in regards to this episode specifically, that translates to the direction as well, because obviously Frakes has a very personal stake in the show, right?
Oh, of course, yeah. He's
and obviously he's proved over the decades at this point that no, he gives a shit.
I mean, he directed the best next gen movie. You'll find that out when you get there.
Oh, I'm sure. You know, I've not seen it, but I know of his reputation behind the camera as well as in front. With this franchise.
He also directed the one that came after that was not good at all, but that's neither here nor there.
My point was he's shown commitment and caring beyond just it's an acting gig, right?
He's still directing episodes of Discovery and Picard. Like, he's still there doing...
Exactly. That's kind of what I'm getting at. And I think that shows here in the direction that this is someone who cares what they're doing, not just, this isn't just an acting gig. And I think this shows already at this stage for Frakes in his career.
Yeah. I was very impressed with the episode by the time it ended, because it started off being pretty solid and fun, a little goofy in places. You had interactions with Data, with Crusher, saying, "Oh, is a successful parent," and I'm like, Data, analyze the data here. I don't know.
Yeah,
have you met Wesley?
There's a couple of goofier moments like that, especially in the first third or so, that just fell a little flat for me, which kind of held the episode back early on. Just kind of what I was getting at the start, where there was a few moments that felt a little bit awkward.
I think it's that thing where if the episode just sort of maintained that quality, it'd have been a good episode with a few, off little beats or whatever. But by the time it got to the heart of the point of the episode, which was kind of the sequel almost, The Measure of a Man, where, debating the rights of Data and Lal, they really that really elevated it, because it got to the point where no, this is about, again, talking about an android's rights and talking about these things. But more than anything else, I think just the idea of Picard sticking up, maybe in a way that, like, the Riker thing a couple episodes ago with the Rashomon episode, and okay, yes, he's willing to play by the rules, but he's going to try and, like, stick up for Riker if he can. I think in this case, it's maybe a bit more impactful in the sense that, one, it's not as weirdly cloudy because it's not like Data's been accused of something, but B, I think... Did I say firstly then B? I think I did. Ignore that and move on.
I think you probably did, but whatever.
Yeah, I second guess myself. But I think there's such a rawness to this of Picard sticking up for his lieutenant this much, and, like, having his back no matter what. That's kind of endearing, and it's one of these things where, like, Star Trek can be about, like, visiting all these places and stuff, but ultimately we have to care about the people who are on the ship. It's about them more than it is about anything else, and I think making us really root for these characters and making them feel like they are this tight unit, I love that. I think Picard, this is a moment where we make you, like, you know what, no matter how grumpy Picard gets, no matter how much he's a bit of a dick at times to other people, like, it's moments like this that make him feel layered, that no matter what, he's going to have their backs. And it makes him more interesting than and I'm not saying that he's more interested in Superman, but Superman obviously is different in that he always sort of gives the impression that he will stick up for you and have your back. Picard will be grumpy and grouchy and all these things, but when
even in the first half of this episode, he's really questioning Data, like, and he's not anywhere near the level of the Admiral, of course, but he's there going, are you sure this is the right thing to do? He's really questioning it.
Yeah. But ultimately, and maybe this is the whole point, is that he's still human. He still has to process it and get to the point where he's really, okay, how does this fit into how I see the world, and how does this fit into my morals, and so on. And of course, and the episode actually has a really sad ending, which I thought worked really well. Like, that Lal basically, she actually, because one of the big things in the episode is that she actually starts to condense words in the way that Data can't. She can't.
Contractions.
He can't form contractions, but she can. Although now that they pointed that out again, there's a couple of moments where he'll say a sentence so quickly that it sounds like he did, and I'm like, that was borderline. He'll say "I have" so quickly that it sounds like "I've" almost, and I'm like, that was close. It was close. I'm on to you, writers. I'm paying attention for this.
I mean, there's probably one that slipped through every so often, but especially early on, I bet.
I don't know. I'm sure someone's went through with a fine-tooth comb.
I'm willing to bet in the first handful of episodes they hadn't really nailed that down, and it was rampant.
Very possible. Someone can go do the detective work, but so it starts to show that she's different, and then it starts to show that she actually has feelings, and it kind of overwhelms her. She gets so concerned about having to leave Data in the ship that she has kind of almost a panic attack, essentially. And
one of the rare instances of Troy being useful in that, when she says she's scared, and Troy's like, oh, you actually are. She can feel.
She can tell.
The fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She can actually sense it. So, and we kind of cut away from there. We go back to like Picard making his speeches. It's great, and then we get the call afterwards for Data and Picard to come down and see Lal, and she's basically dying. Like her body, like the circuitry, it can't handle all like the human feelings. This is essentially what's killing her. And there's this wonderful moment, I thought, where after Data's turned her off and we've had her death, so and so, right? This early child death, essentially what it is. He comes onto the bridge, and there's a moment where everyone on the bridge kind of stands up and looks at him, and it's like, you can imagine this moment in a real world context, right? Someone's just lost a baby, right? Someone's just had a baby, and like 2 weeks after being born, the baby's died, and just how devastating that is, and how everyone around them in their circles knows how heavy this is. It's this hard thing to like, how do you interact with these people right after? What do you say? It's impossible. And you get this feeling when he walks onto that bridge that everyone is feeling that. Riker's feeling it, Picard's feeling it, everyone is. And it's kind of this wonderful little moment afterwards where Data, in a way that a human wouldn't, says, no, she's in here. I copied her data so that her memories will always be with me. And it's kind of what we say to each other, right? It's what humans say, oh, they'll always be, the person who died, they'll always be with you. They're in there. That's
probably where he got the idea from.
Yeah, but he literally did it. He took her data, no pun intended, and put it in himself. And
honestly, I was a little surprised. I thought, oh, is this how he... Does he develop the ability to use contractions because that spark is in there now?
I mean, they could play that if they wanted to later.
So I was actually surprised when right after it didn't do that. I honestly thought that's the route it was going to take with that beat.
Yeah, I mean, if they wanted to play that later, they totally could, and I'd let them away with it because they've set it up.
Yeah,
in such a way. And there is kind of like almost like the relief on Picard when he sees how Data's handling this, even though everyone else still feels the weight of it, is kind of nice. And it ends with Data taking his post and off they fly to the next location. But it's I thought it was a touching ending, honestly. I think Lal at the start of the episode felt like kind of a goofy comedy character almost. And if you'd asked me in that first 10 minutes, would I feel affected by her death at the end of the episode, I'd have said not a chance. And it's not that I cared about her so much at the end, but the way it hit everyone else, the way everyone else treated it, the way like it could or could not affect Data, I found it actually to be really effective. Even the Admiral, who goes in to try and help, because he
acts genuinely sincere, where with the way he talks to Data after.
Yeah, he treats it like, and maybe this is the first time where because it's brought up a couple of times where they mention you're a father, you've done this, you've done that, and he says, the job's kept me away from my kids, and I've heard this over and over, and it feels like the way he talks to Data when Lal is dying or he's trying to help, and he's having to break the news to the others that there's no hope for her, that she's going to die, and because he's not a surgeon, of course, it's not like he's a doctor, he's a computer technician or whatever.
Yeah.
He's someone who works in that field, which is why he wants Lal in the first place. So he's helping Data and co with the trying to like fix the problem, and he comes out like a surgeon though in a hospital saying, "I'm sorry, but the damage is just too great.
There's nothing anyone could have done."
Yeah. But I almost wonder if like the thought of him losing his kids has finally made it click, like how Data feels about her. And maybe feels is not the right word because he doesn't feel.
That's the interesting part, isn't it? And there's a conversation earlier on with Lal asking him like if it's beyond our capabilities to feel, why even try? And then obviously she does develop those feelings, but the fact that Data doesn't, but still has to process this in his own way, it's very unique.
It's very unique, and it ties into him wanting to be human anyway, because the whole idea of wanting to procreate is something that not even just humans, that all species seem to want to do, right? It's this instinct that many have. Not that everyone literally wants to have kids, because they don't, but enough do that it's a very common thing. It's a very natural thing for a lot of people, and he sees this and wants to do it because of that. It's just him emulating humans again, and yeah, it's kind of touching. It doesn't reach the high for me as the Picard speeches. The Picard speech for me
they're top notch.
Is where the episode cranks up to like great caliber.
Yeah, like I said, that's exactly why you have Patrick Stewart in this role, because he delivers those speeches like almost no one else can.
Yeah, wonderful stuff. Really. So. Yeah, this episode ended up being great. I mean, I maybe this is controversial, but I think I like this more than yesterday's Enterprise, which I know that might be shocking to some people. I think given that
I do too, yeah.
And it's not. I mean, I loved that episode. That episode was great. I think it's notable that we've had quite a few great episodes this season, and then we've had a couple back to back, and
it's funny if you just take. I think it was the last 3 episodes. If you give me the descriptions, yesterday's Enterprise, we just covered that. You go. Okay, so you give me the description for that. You tell me, okay, there's a Rashomon inspired episode, and then Data's got a kind of kid. I'm gonna go. Well, that's clearly the one that's going to be the roughest, right, out of the 3. And then no, it's easily the best of the 3 for me.
Yeah, no, it was a great episode. So I would happily sing the praises of this one. So no, it does really feel that these episodes are starting to get more and more distinct, unique voices, and it's something we really noted out with Q Who especially. I think if I went back to Measure of a Man, I might feel it there too. But I think Measure of a Man started off feeling normal, kind of like this one did. Oh, actually, no, because this one didn't feel normal. That was kind of part of my point. Is I felt, even though it didn't feel like it was going to be a great episode necessarily, this one felt more unique to begin with. Whereas A Measure of a Man, I think, started off feeling like, it's a typical Enterprise,
I think it developed into what it was as the circumstances unfold.
Yeah, and I think there's a comparison here where this also developed into great, but I think the feeling of the episode was different. It felt more distinct and unique, and that it was focusing on Data. Because there was a moment where Wesley's asking him, like, what do you do when you're on duty? And so it kind of was glossing over the fact that Data is on duty, like he's going to work and doing his, on the bridge or wherever, like he's doing all his stuff. Like we're spending weeks on this story essentially over the course of the episode, and so it felt more like a really honed, focused story, which I really appreciate.
It's very unique. No, I really enjoyed
it. So that is The Offspring. Next time, let's see if we can live up to it. We got Sins of the Father as the title of the episode. Here's the description. A Klingon commander comes aboard the Enterprise in an officer exchange program initiated by Starfleet, much to the chagrin of the crew. So we get another Klingon on board.
The reverse Riker.
It's the reverse Riker. But that was a good episode, so this...
It was.
No reason why this can't also be good.
I'm not looking at the IMDb here. I don't know what its score is, but in concept, I'm into that.
I will say it's favourable looking, score-wise.
On concept, again, these 4 in a row, I'd have gone, that one sounds like it should be up there.
Yeah, it feels like we're starting to hit a bit of a stride here. I'm sure there'll still be, stinkers interspersed, but it does kind of feel like we're starting to be more consistently on the better side of things here.
Definitely in this back half of this season, I would say.
Definitely feels that way. So that is Sins of the Father coming next time. But by all means, let us know what you thought of this one in the comments below. You can like and subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on the Twitters for mailed_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the show and everything we do, you can head over to patreon.com/mailfuzztv. And you can support us for as little as $1 per month. That $1 will get you access to a bonus already cancelled on 6 Feet Under. 2 episodes per month, so you can go look for that and find that. But you also get bonus episodes of some of the movie podcasts, and then you get more stuff at the $5 tier and so on. So go and have a look and see if you're interested. But that is that. You can, of course, like I say, like and subscribe. That stuff's really important. Liking kind of lets YouTube know that it's content that you think is worth other people watching, so they recommend us out a little bit more. So that does really help us out. If you want to just help us for free, just hit the like button. Easy. Just a click or a tap, depending on what you're using to watch us. I hear all sorts. I hear smart TVs, consoles, touchscreens. I'll be honest. I would love to know the percentage of people who have watched us at least once on a toilet seat, because I bet it's actually quite high.
I tend to not watch anything while I'm sat on the toilet. I'll have my phone. I'll scroll through stuff.
Well,
it's
yeah,
very
you
rare
don't
I'll watch anything.
But other people do.
I'm sure they do. I find that weird, personally. Like I don't know. Maybe it's just because in my bathroom there's like an extractor fan and the noise is quite loud when the light's on, and it's like, just it would irritate me trying to watch something over that noise.
All right. I was just trying to crack a joke about people watching us while taking a shit, but I mean, if you...
I'm thinking about it. I'm just like, it made me think I'd never actually watched anything.
Very well. That is us. Thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching Star Trek, guys. And remember, when it comes to the ladies, Wesley Crusher is in complete control.